how did you cope with relating to musicians and them not being jealous of you or them not attacking you or there's this huge Me Too now, right? There's a huge problem with a lot of things coming out from the past about how musicians have been harmed both in education and in orchestras, and that I think that comes not only from physical assault and things that have gone wrong, but I think it also comes from tremendous jealousies. And your background is so big and so robust, and you were interfacing with musicians all the time. Were they afraid of you? Were they just, did you not hear it? Like, how did you deal with that kind of banter and the things that were talked about behind closed doors about people that were getting farther ahead than others? Was it because you weren't playing full time that it was okay, or how do you think you survived that?
It's very insightful of you. So when I headed up the American Symphony Orchestra, I was the youngest symphony orchestra manager in the country. 25 or 26 years old.
Wow.
And it wasn't that much jealousy as long as the musicians felt like I was getting them work. So as long as I was committed to finding them work, and at first I really didn't feel it was my job. I felt it was my job to do the subscription series and fill that concert hall, and get the best players possible, and I was an asshole, in those younger days. If I didn't think a player was playing right and we were a freelance musician, I would talk to my personnel manager and say, is he up to the task? I mean, we're going to record this. I had good mentors. I had excellent guest conductors, so the musicians were able to tell the difference. I think there might have been a little bit of jealousy, but I always had some relationship to education. So no matter what position I held, whether it was the American Symphony or at the 92nd Street Y, it was always an active approach either to garner money to promote music in the schools. We did a lot of programs in the schools, and while some of the musicians never particularly loved to do that, they recognized that they were getting paid to do it, and it was potentially inspiring a new audience. And I got fired frequently. And I had a friend of mine in the music business and in the film business who said, I don't know a single film director who hasn't been fired at one point or another from his job. So I felt that my job was to turn around orchestras and to turn around institutions. And then once that's done, I thought, okay, how do I build on this? It's why I made a bit of a switch later in my career to see how one could use music in intimate settings to try to animate a resort experience. That's what really created the magic at Sundance, is that we had a rehearsal hall, we had a performance hall, we had a film studio, so people could come more than just for a head in bed or a nice dining experience. They could go to a film, they could go to a hike. It was more holistic that way. Right. And I feel that's the wave of the future. When people think of boutique hotels, they're gonna think more about experiential learning. And I think that's one of the great hopes. I do a songwriter series with the Bluebird Cafe in Nashville. And it's been remarkable because it's only 3 musicians. It's not a huge amount to fly them out to the space. And what do, Lisa? They tell the stories behind the songs.
Right.
And that's the built-in education. No one needs to read a program note. They just need to know what made the songwriter Tom Schuyler write the song, God Bless the Boys Who Make the Noise on 16th Avenue. And suddenly it has a connection to them. And they never knew who Tom Schuyler was. They never knew that song. They never knew that 16th Avenue is Music Row in Nashville.
Right. So it almost seems like you went from really helping musicians in an insular way, because you were working with the ensembles themselves, trying to fix their problems, to leveraging those ensembles into the big world in terms of...
That's very well said.
Right? It seems like you should realize that maybe that was a better way to effectuate change.
Yeah. And I was able to choose the ensembles, let's say from the American Symphony Orchestra or from the New York Chamber Orchestra at the 92nd Street Y, where it was members of. So I was still able to market it and leverage it as the American Symphony Orchestra or the New York Chamber Symphony or mostly Mozart. But I might have only had the budget to do a handful of musicians. So it was a little more, it took a little more time to find the appropriate repertoire. But once that happened, and I was able to control the intimacy of the setting and the sound of the setting. I can't emphasize enough the sound, right? If you're going to try to do something in a half-assed high school auditorium, you're not going to create future concertgoers. It's not going to be the same experience. So I would go ahead of time, check out the space, see if I needed to amplify any of that music, have a good sound man with me who I've had for years to know exactly the best way to position that so that people walked out of that experience saying, that was really cool, I'd like to do it again.
So if somebody was listening to this who was a music major at a school thinking that they love music, but maybe they're good at some other things, and they're wondering how they could leverage this conversation into a career path, what, given the world we live in today, would you suggest to them to try to do a version 2.0 or to advance your ideas? Because I think your ideas are spot on about the future. And I think we need a lot more people thinking like this. So what would you suggest might be some things they could consider to help them build a career path that would be successful, but also increase participation?
Again, an excellent question, Lisa. I think they need to know a little bit more about the dedication that brought them to where they are, that their own skills brought them a long way, but so did a nonprofit board of directors. Most people don't understand the role that a nonprofit board plays. They're volunteers. So I would encourage anybody to simply read an IRS 990 report of that orchestra so that they could have a better understanding of how much it costs for the development office, for the marketing office, for the printing of those materials, for the rental of the hall, for the rental of the equipment, so that they know it's not just about paying the musicians, although that should be first and foremost. They don't need to know how to read necessarily a P&L sheet or a balance sheet. They don't have to take an accounting function. Exactly. And then I would encourage them to become a student of art history, not just music history, because the connections are just amazing. Just to give you a brief example, there's been a study a few years ago by the Harvard Medical School. It was a double-blind study, and they took internists who had a background in the visual arts. And then the control group was one that had no background whatsoever in the visual arts. And after the study was completed, it turned out that those who had a background in the visual arts had a 50% higher ability to visually diagnose disease. Amazing to me. And I took it to mean if a patient walks in and is showing signs of Bell's palsy, they could tell right away. They don't need to do, many more tests. And so I think that connection between art history and music history is an important one. And finally, attend guest speakers. If there's a gifted guest speaker who's going to talk on a particular subject, doesn't have to be about music. Could be about science, could be about poetry, could be about art history. Try to avail yourselves so that you could bring to your music a historical reference to why it's important that you're playing it.
How did your opportunities come to you? How did you find them?
A lot of it was luck. Some of it was at the time critical writers from the major newspapers. So, for example, my time in New York, nearly all of my concerts were covered by a cultural critic who is writing about the importance of the programming, why it was important to do, contemporary music. Always what got me press coverage was the commissioning of new works. There's not nearly enough new works. If I was a philanthropist now, and AT&T did this many, many years ago, but it never went anywhere, I would fund a second performance of world premiere works. I mean, how many times do we find it's a world premiere performance that creates a lot of buzz? It creates a little bit of press, far, far less now. I would do second performances and third performances, because you come to know different aspects of that same piece when you hear it multiple times.
Mm-hmm. And from those critics, is that how you jobs opened or doors opened, or like how did that work?
Yeah. So with the critics, executive search firms read what critics write, right? So an executive search firm might approach me. That's how I got my gig at Disney. Would you be interested in making a leap over here? Because Michael Eisner has some interesting ideas that he's watched you do at the 92nd Street Y, or more importantly, not just the 92nd Street Y, but upstate New York, called Chautauqua. And Chautauqua is a lovely, kind of musical festival during the summer, ballet, speakers, and the like. So that was, that was part of it. And luck. When the Olympics came around, a cultural group was formed of local leaders, of all places in Salt Lake. I grew up thinking there was nothing west of 9th Avenue. And Salt Lake was a stopover, and this cultural group formed. I think it helped that I had that background both in classical music, as well as with the Walt Disney Company, because after all, the Olympics is about television and television rights. And it's the one thing that the symphony orchestra does not have going for it. It is not an interesting theater experience or television experience. It just is not. You could only pan from the solo of the oboe in the Dvorak New World Symphony so many times.
Right. So you mentioned before that getting fired, or basically what appears to be failure, happens, right? How do you think we could help the music industry do better with failure? Because there is continuous failure, whether it be from people being pushed out or people quitting because they don't like the situation they're in, and I have seen over my career that when people fail, they tend to have huge setbacks, and you didn't. You've had no setbacks. Yeah. You just go better thing, better thing.
Yeah, to be honest, the tough part is the lag in between. Now, I've always been able to consult, so if I move from one job, I'm lucky enough to, pick up a gig and do something in the visual arts with the Holocaust Museum or something. But no, there have been the times of pain and worrying about how the bills are going to be paid, and the like. But
what advice to people who are creative and sensitive about this subject matter?
Yeah, it is tough. It is the toughest question because it's filled with failure.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, every audition, 200, 300, 400 blind auditions. You're not even seen. And now you're having to send in a tape, and that's not nearly the same kind of experience. So I don't know if I have an answer except the cliched, persevere and broaden out. Don't feel like the only thing you could do is be the principal violinist, because there's too few opportunities to that. Now, I'm cautious to say teach, because in my experience, the worst teachers were failed performers. It just didn't work. Now, you could do both if you're great at both. I suspect if you were a student of Glenn Dicterow at the New York Philharmonic, he was a very gifted teacher, himself. But that's a tough one. I wish I had a better answer. I'll think about it further.
And to bring us all the way home, because this has been such an enjoyable conversation, I really, truly appreciate your time. And I think I could talk to you for hours because you just have a fascinating background. And I'm going to expect information about Santa Fe because I'm a Santa Fe lover, and I'm going to come to one of your experiences at Bishop Lodge because I love
Excellent. I love Santa Fe. Well, here's a good example. Santa Fe, the challenge with musicians at Santa Fe, I know the person. He's now moved on. He was the executive director of the Santa Fe Orchestra. When I was, doing my work in Santa Fe, I'd create partnerships. Right. So it was the Chamber Music Festival with the opera, with the orchestra, with singer-songwriters, and to create those interesting partnerships where the very nature of the audience of San Francisco, of Santa Fe, is mostly art gallery.
Right.
Right. Mostly, lovely art gallery. So do a performance at an art gallery, bring the art gallery to the performance, hire a gifted writer to write the note that links the art that you're looking at to the music of the times. And then you have a chance. There's only one major newspaper, in Santa Fe. They still cover the arts, a little bit. But there's lovely, small, intimate gatherings, as you well know, in Santa Fe, whether that's the Basilica or whether that's the new Opera House or even a small room at the now renovated chapel at Bishop's Lodge. It's wonderful.
For sure. And so just to bring this full circle, from where you began, if somebody was listening to this and said, this is a brand new world for me. I don't even, I thought about playing a wind instrument and I just passed it by. But now I'm older. What would you say to them to get them to try in their adult life, to try to play a wind instrument right now? What would you say to them?
Pick up a recorder. Pick up a recorder. Don't spend a lot of time on it. Don't try to be a great recorder, but you need the immediacy of success. It's got to sound good. Don't take up a guitar because you're only going to do terrible Neil Young songs. So take up a recorder. Because you don't want to have the fight immediately of embouchure or in the case of an oboe, of your reeds, and trying to get the knife to get the reed, just right. And listen to the Mozart clarinet concerto, right? And pick a handful, not the whole thing. You don't need to worry about the whole thing. Take the second movement and just listen to that adagio. And if they're so inclined, I still would recommend Donald Grove's History of Western Music.
Ray, it's been a joy. Thank you so much for doing this with me.
Lisa, you're a legend in the field again. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.